Shereen Bhan, who's talking to SpiceJet Chairman Ajay Singh. Shereen, over to you.
Well, thanks very much, guys. Yes, I do have Ajay Singh of SpiceJet joining us. Remember, he's been in the saddle for about a year now, and they've managed to turn SpiceJet around from what was a very, very difficult situation. Mr. Singh, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC-TV18, and good to have you back on the channel. Congratulations on completing a year. If I may ask you, is the operational course correction that you had undertaken when you came back to SpiceJet now over and done with? If I were to look at the numbers, fuel costs, of course, are down 35% year-on-year, which, of course, has been the big beneficiary as far as aviation stocks are concerned and aviation companies are concerned. Your employee costs are down 10% year-on-year. Your interest costs are down 50% year-on-year. Has the operational course correction in that sense now, is it 50% complete? Is it almost complete?
I think we've come quite some distance from where we were last year. As you know, last year we had large number of flights that were cancelled just before the ownership changed, and the on-time performance was at 40%. SpiceJet had been losing money for 5 years on the trot, it was just the lessors were trying to repossess their planes, the vendors were asking for their money. So it was a very difficult situation for SpiceJet. And I think what SpiceJet had lost in this period was really the confidence of its customers and of its partners. I think we've been able to make significant recovery in the last 1 year. As you know, consumer confidence has been pretty high. The last 9 months, SpiceJet has flown with an occupancy factor in excess of 92%, which clearly shows that people have come back to fly on SpiceJet. Lessors have returned the planes. The outstanding payments, which were close to 2,200 crores, are now close to 700 crores. So a lot of the settlements have been done, a lot of the payments have been made. The on-time performance is amongst the best in the industry at this time. The cancellation rate is by far the lowest of all airlines in India. So I think we made significant progress. But to say that this is all done and dusted and complete would not really be accurate. I think there is just lots to be done for SpiceJet. You mentioned some of the costs that had been reduced.
Yeah, let me ask you about that, sir. And if you can give us a picture as far as your total debt is concerned. I understand it stood at 1,418 crores at the end of 2015. Can you update us on the debt situation and what do you expect going forward? How much reduction do you expect going forward?
If I look at the total payables, when we took over the airline, they were close to 2,200 crores, this included the bank debt that was due and payments to vendors, etc. Now, at this time, that number stands at close to 700 crores. And part of that 700 crores is actually business as usual debt. So that puts us in a pretty strong position, and we expect that over the course of the next 12 months, we will be in a much healthier situation than we are today. So in addition to that,
I think what's
critical. It's tough to put an accurate number to it, but we expect that we will pretty much be left with only the business as usual sort of debt, which is roughly in the range of 300 to 400 crores. So that's where we should be in the course of this year. I think importantly, what we need to do going forward is to keep working on reducing our costs, the stickier costs that we have not been able to address as well so far, which is the cost of the acquisition of planes and therefore the lease rental costs for the planes, the cost of heavy maintenance of our fleet. So those are areas that we will work very actively on over the next 9 to 12 months. In addition to that, while we have made significant recovery on the revenue side, and despite the fact that average ticket fares have been lower by about 20 to 25% for the entire industry, revenues for SpiceJet have actually increased significantly. Both passenger revenues as well as ancillary revenues have increased significantly, and we need to keep working to ensure that.
Can you give us a breakup on that front, sir? Can you give us a breakup on the ancillary revenue part and how you see that going forward?
Well, when we started in January of 2015, The ancillary revenue accounted for about 6% of total revenues of the company. That number is close to 16% at this time. We expect to increase that further through the course of the year, and we are targeting a revenue of about 20% for ancillaries.
Okay, that's as far as the ancillary revenue is concerned. Let me also ask you in terms of costs, because the expectation now is that perhaps the best in terms of fuel costs has been enjoyed by the industry. We will have seen, of course, the rupee depreciate, and also prices as far as crude is concerned perhaps may have bottomed out at these levels. So what can we expect now in terms of fuel costs as well as employee costs, which are down 10% year on year? You were talking about further cost optimization. Can you give us a roadmap of what we can expect in terms of cost optimization from here on?
Well, there are two large pieces of cost that are still to be addressed. The first is the cost of acquisition and lease of planes, and that is being addressed through a new order that we expect to place for aircraft, as well as shifting from having a significant number of planes on wet lease to a dry lease situation. That will help us reduce cost of the planes. In addition to that, the heavy maintenance costs, the engineering costs, those are things that we are looking at in terms of renegotiating some of those contracts and entering into new contracts simultaneously with the acquisition of new planes. So both
so
those.
What would that then mean in terms of margins? What would that then mean and translate into in terms of margins? You being able to bring down the costs as you just articulated.
I don't want to give guidance on margins. As you know, the EBITDA margins currently are in the low 30s, and we expect that we should certainly be able to sustain them and hopefully improve them somewhat.
Okay, you were talking about the fleet expansion as well as the aircraft acquisition plan. We talked about it the last time you and I had a conversation. By when do we expect that order to be placed? And in terms of how many aircraft you expect to add on in this particular calendar year, is there a number now that you've fixed on?
Well, firstly, on the order itself, we are working very actively and aggressively with both Boeing and with Airbus, and we expect to have that done soon. It's a pretty exacting and detailed exercise. We don't want to rush it because these are orders which will live with SpiceJet for years to come, and so we need to get it right. And we hope to get it done soon, but I don't want to put an exact time frame to it.
All right.